A man kneels on a wooden floor in a quiet room. In front of him, on a square of white cloth, sits a stone, dull, heavy, the color of dried clay. It looks like something the river left behind after a storm. Nothing special, nothing worth keeping. But the man's hands are trembling, not from cold, not from fear. His hands are trembling because 5 hours ago, 3 different people held this same stone. The first offered 2 copper coins for it. The second offered 10 pieces of silver. The third could not speak. How can the same object be worth almost nothing and be worth everything on the same afternoon? The answer is not about the stone. Hundreds of years ago, in a village at the foot of a mountain in Japan, a young man named Kenji walked into a market carrying something he did not understand. By the time he walked out, he understood something about himself that most people never learn. This is what he found.
Kenji worked with his hands. He repaired wooden fences, carried sacks of rice to the storehouse, and swept the stone paths between houses before the village woke. He was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, but no one seemed to notice. The neighbors nodded at him the way people nod at a fence post. It is there, it does its job, and no one thinks about who built it. At night, Kenji sat alone in his small room. He pressed his palms flat against his knees and stared at the floor. His shoulders ached, not from the work, but from something heavier. Silence. No one had said a cruel word to him. That was the strange thing. No one had said any word at all.
One autumn morning, when the mist still hung low between the cedar trees, Kenji climbed the narrow trail above the village. At the top lived an old teacher everyone called Sensei Haru. His house was small, built from dark wood, and a single cedar tree grew so close to the roof that its shadow moved across the floor like a slow clock. Kenji knelt on the tatami mat and bowed. "Sensei," he said, "I work harder than anyone I know, but the village treats me as if I am not there. Tell me honestly, am I worthless?" Sensei Haru did not answer. He turned to a wooden shelf behind him and lifted down a box wrapped in faded cloth. Inside was a stone, dull, heavy, shaped like a heart, and covered in reddish dust. It looked like something you would find at the bottom of a river and throw back without a second thought. "Take this stone to the market in town," the old man said. "Show it to people. Ask what they would pay for it." He held up one finger. "But no matter what anyone offers, do not sell it. Bring it back to me." Kenji wrapped the stone in cloth and walked down the mountain. The market was alive. Wooden stalls crowded together along a narrow street. Vendors called out prices. Barrels of pickled vegetables stood in rows beside bundles of dried fish. The noise pressed against Kenji's skin like summer heat. He stopped first at a vegetable stall. The woman behind it had thick arms and soil beneath her fingernails. She had been lifting crates since dawn. Kenji unwrapped the stone and held it out. She glanced at it the way you glance at a clock you have already checked. She turned it once in her rough hands and set it down. "It is heavy enough," she said. "I could use it to hold down the corner of my tarp when the wind picks up. I will give you 2 copper coins." 2 copper coins. Kenji felt something drop inside his chest, a small stone of its own, falling into dark water. He thanked her quietly and moved on. Next, he found a shopkeeper, a man in a dark indigo coat who sold pottery, wooden combs, and small painted fans. The shopkeeper picked up the stone with both hands and tilted it slowly toward the light. Something caught his eye, a faint shimmer, barely visible, hiding beneath the dust. "Interesting," the shopkeeper murmured. He placed it on a square of cloth beside his best teapot. "This could be a fine decoration for a home."
a conversation piece. I will offer you 10 silver coins. That is generous for a dirty stone. 10 silver coins. Kenji's fingers tightened around the edge of his sleeve. 10 silver coins could feed him for a full month. His mouth opened, but the old teacher's voice held the door shut. He bowed and walked away.
At the far end of the market, past the noise, past the crowd, there was a shop Kenji had never entered. It had a cedar door and no sign outside. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of wood oil. A single paper lantern burned on a low table. The walls were bare, except for one scroll of calligraphy hanging in the alcove. Behind the table sat an elderly man, a gem cutter, with a jeweler's loop resting against his chest and hands that moved as if they were reading the air itself. Kenji placed the stone on the table without a word. The gem cutter did not rush. He took a soft cloth and cleaned one small corner of the stone, pressing gently, the way a person touches something they already suspect is alive.
Then he stopped. His breath caught. He reached for his loop. His fingers trembled as he brought it to his eye. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Is it worth something?" Kenji asked. The old craftsman set the loop down slowly, the way you set down something sacred. He looked at Kenji with eyes that held both wonder and sadness. "This is not a stone," he said. "This is a ruby, an ancient one. It is the largest I have held in 40 years of this work." He paused. "I could offer you 100,000 gold coins, and even then I would be stealing from you. I cannot name its price because it has none. It is beyond price."
Kenji wrapped the ruby in its cloth with careful hands. He climbed back up the mountain trail. His legs shook, not from the walk, but from the weight of what he now understood. He knelt before Sensei Haru and told him everything. The copper coins, the silver, the gold, the trembling hands of the gem cutter.
Sensei Haru held the ruby in his open palm and smiled. Not the smile of a man who had won something, but the smile of a man who had been waiting. "Kenji," he said, "you asked me if you were worthless. I did not answer because words would not have been enough. Now you have seen the answer with your own eyes. The stone never changed. Not once. It was the same weight in the vegetable seller's hands as it was in the gem cutter's hands. The same dust. The same shape. The only thing that changed was who was holding it. This is one of the oldest lessons in the world. The Zen masters taught that a mirror does not create the face it reflects. If the mirror is clouded with dust, the reflection becomes unclear, but the face behind it is still whole, still complete. Your worth does not disappear because someone cannot see it. It was never theirs to give, and it was never theirs to take away. But knowing your value is only half of the lesson. The other half is harder. Think about this carefully. You cannot control how another person sees you. You never could. A man may spend his whole life trying to prove himself to someone who was never looking in the first place. The vegetable seller's 2 copper coins were never a measurement of the ruby. They were a measurement of the vegetable seller, of what she needed, what she understood, and where her eyes stopped looking. So the mirror tells you, what you are is already complete, and life teaches you the rest. Stop handing that mirror to people who are not able to hold it. Your task is not to convince the vegetable seller that you are precious. That is not her failure, and it is not your job. Your task is to leave the vegetable market. Before you leave this story, sit with 2 questions. Do not rush to answer them. Let them rest the way that Ruby rested inside its wooden box for years, quietly, in the dark, until the right hands found it. First, who is holding your stone right now? Is it someone with a loop and steady hands? Someone who knows what they are looking at? Or is it someone who is searching for a way to hold down a tarp? Second, and this is the harder question, are you still standing in the vegetable market? Are you still walking from stall to stall, showing the same stone to the same kind of eyes, hoping that the next person will finally see what the last one missed? Kenji climbed that mountain twice in one day. Once carrying a stone, once carrying a ruby. The object in his hands did not change. What changed was what he knew about the stone and about himself. You already know what you are carrying. The question is not what it is worth. The question is where you are standing. Keep seeking, keep growing, and keep shining. Subscribe to join us for the next one.